Hello and welcome back to Superhero Maniac, your one-stop destination for all the superhero updates. Disney Plus released the 5th episode of Moon Knight this Wednesday, and oh my god, this episode is even more bizarre and confusing than the ending of the last one. From a journey through afterlife to Moon Knight and Mark's origin story, and from the White Asylum, we end it at in episode 4 to the Field of Reeds. It's filled with references from Egyptian mythology and the Marvel comics. If you are confused after watching this episode and want some answers, you are at the right place. So let's dive in. We pick things from the last episode with Mark, Steven and Tourette screaming. From this we get cut back to Dr. Harrow's office. We see these kinds of sudden cuts multiple times throughout the episode, similar to the ones we saw in the WandaVision, suggesting that this reality, just like the one in Westview, is not completely true. Mark is injured with a bruise on his nose, very similar to the one he had in the Jeff Lemire's version of Moon Knight, on which the asylum part is based. Dr. Harrow tells him that he is in the Putnam Medical Facility in Chicago, Illinois. In the comics, Chicago is Mark's hometown, and when Mark's dissociative identity disorder comes out, Mark's father interned him at a hospital with a similar name. There are a lot of Egyptian artifacts in the room, a statue of Ammit, glass pyramids and containers from the tomb in the last episode. There is also some symbolization here. A side shot shows Mark on the one side with a shelf of medicines and Arthur on the one side with a shelf filled with books. This shows that Mark is the ill and delusional one who needs help, while Harrow is the one with knowledge. Another interesting detail is that Harrow's office is the same set as the room where multiple sarcophagi were kept in Arthur's compound in episode 2. Mark gets agitated and the guards inject him with sedative. Cutting us back to Mark and Steven screaming, Tourette tells them that they did actually die and are now in Duat, the Egyptian underworld. In the comics, Duat was the realm of the dead in the ancient Egyptian mythology. It was the realm of the deity Osiris and the residence of other gods and supernatural beings. She explains that this place is too complex for the human mind and thus takes the form of some place a person can easily recognize. Tourette also mentioned that this is just one of the many intersectional planes of untethered consciousness, like the ancestral plane. The ancestral plane is the realm that the Black Panther travels to in order to communicate with their ancestors. This is also one of the very few connections to other MCU series and movies that we have seen so far. But wait, helping people in their journey through the afterlife seems like a job for Anubis, the Egyptian god of the afterlife. So why is Tourette, the goddess of fertility and childbirth, doing this job? The answer lies in the Ushaptis we saw at the beginning of episode 4. One of the 10 Ushaptis on the shelf looked like Anubis, suggesting he was also trapped in stone by the Enid, and so Tourette is filling his shoes. This also explains why she was reading the rules from papers explaining she was a new recruit in this position. Mark is convinced that he is insane and opens a gate to prove his point, only to find out that they are on a ship sailing on the sand of the underworld. In many mythologies, it is believed that a person travels to his afterlife through a boat. Tourette plugs the hearts of Mark and Steven, white as a ghost because it's Disney Plus and the series is PG-13 and not R-rated, and weighs them on Anubis scales. In Egyptian mythology, after death, a person's heart is weighed against the feather of truth. If their heart is lighter, they pass to the field of reeds or heaven, else they are consumed by the crocodile goddess Ammit. The field of reeds was mentioned in episode 1 when the little girl asked Steven why he was not in the field of reeds. This was some strong foreshadowing as we see Steven indeed doesn't make it to the field of reeds later in this episode. The scales don't balance. Similar to how the scales of Arthur's arm didn't balance for Steven in episode 2. This is because there is still a lot of conflict between Mark and Steven. Their hearts are incomplete. Tourette tells them to go back inside, revisit memories and find out what is missing. While going through memories, we see Mark standing on the road next to a car. Here we see the QR code on the wall, which leads us to a free issue of the 1980 Moon Knight Volume 1 comic. This comic explains the origin story of Moon Knight, which we already discussed in our previous videos. Next, we are led to a room filled with the corpses of all people Mark has killed in his entire life. Mark remembers each person he has ever killed, just like Bucky Barnes. Mark mentions Gabon, Dubai and New York, places where he went on a mission as a mercenary. He explains to Steven that these were all criminals who the Moon Knight killed to protect the travelers of the night. No, not vampires, just people who travel at night. There is also a little boy in the room who runs away. Another thing worth noting is that there is no Bushman in the room, suggesting he is still alive, making him a potential villain for season 2. From here, we get to see the origin story of Mark Spector and his multiple personalities. Now, Marvel has slightly changed the origin story of Mark, perhaps to gain some sympathy for the mercenary. In one of the memories, we see Mark and his little brother Randall on their family lawn along with their parents, Elias and Wendy Spector. A small detail here, we see Randall drawing a one-finned goldfish just like Gus from Steven's apartment in episode 1. We hear Mark say "later gators" to his mother just like Steven did in episode 1. The siblings go to a cave to play, but unfortunately the cave gets flooded and Randall aka Roro dies. After the death, Mark's mother becomes spiteful and blames Mark for it. She becomes abusive, and to cope with the abuse, Mark developed dissociative identity disorder and Stephen Grant is born. It was heartbreaking to see a kid go through such a traumatic experience. Hats off to Marvel for covering this so well. DID does develop in childhood as a coping mechanism for a traumatic and abusive experience. In Mark's room, we see a poster of the Tom Buster movie, which we saw at the beginning of the Asylum chapter in the last episode. The movie featured British archaeologist Stephen Grant, who inspires the other personality of Mark. There were two small details in this poster. The names on the poster mentioned the creators of Moon Knight, Doug Moench and Don Perlin, and the movie is said to be Timely Atlas production, homage to the old names of Marvel Comics, Timely Comics and Atlas Comics. In the comics, Mark does have a younger brother Randall, but he doesn't die. Randall was always jealous of Mark and he too went on to become a mercenary. The brothers even fought side by side. Going forward, Randall betrays Mark, leading to a fight and Randall getting injured. Randall synthetically acquires the same power as Moon Knight, calling himself Shadow Knight. The fact that Randall dies as a child in this series is not promising start for the character. Following this, we see yet another traumatic scene. We see Mark going to his mother's funeral. This experience is so traumatizing for him that he again summons the Stephen Grant personality, who believes his mom is alive. We even see Stephen talking on the phone to his mother when clearly no number is dialed. Mark tells us that this happened about 2 months ago, and that's when their personalities started to blend together. Back on the ship, the scales are not yet balanced, and so they get attacked by the unbalanced souls of Duath. There is a fight in which Steven falls into the sand and freezes to death. Yes, I see the irony because they are already dead, but you get the point. But Steven dying doesn't make sense cause he is just one of Mark's personalities. Also, he will probably lie with the unbalanced souls, and so a rescue is not completely out of question. With Stephen gone, the scales now get balanced and Marks enter the field of reeds or heaven. The song playing at the end of as Marks finds himself in the field of reeds is this by Manuel Bonilla. This translates to Beyond the Sun and the song's Spanish lyrics are about passing into heaven peacefully. But how can Mark make it to heaven? The implications of the episode ending are that by sharing his memories with Stephen, Mark has forgiven himself and accepted his past, and that was enough to earn him a place in the field of reeds. Also, with acceptance of his past, maybe there is no need for another personality anymore, symbolized by Stephen falling off. Stephen accepting that he was created by Mark comes just before he is turned to stone, and this seems the most likely explanation for why the scales balance immediately after his sacrifice. The episode ends with a significant twist, leaving us with a bunch of questions. Is Stephen really gone? And in all this confusion, where is Jack Lockley, the other personality who has been severely hinted throughout the series? Has Harrow released Emmett? I guess we just have to wait for the season finale to get our answers. We will back with yet another exciting video. Till then, signing off.